Welcome to Scrapbook.com's Craft Remix, the place where one set of supplies turns into endless possibilities.
Each episode, 3 incredibly talented crafters take on the same creative challenge.
They all receive the same key items to use in their projects.
And from those same supplies, they each create something completely unique.
3 crafters, 3 different visions, 3 amazing projects.
All in one episode just for you.
This is the Craft Remix.
Hello friends, Mirisha here, and welcome back to Scrapbook.com. Today, I'm super excited to be part of the Craft Remix, where 3 creatives are each given the same 3 products and challenged to remix them into something totally unique. I love projects like this because they really stretch your creativity. And today, I'll be showing you how I created this festive stocking card using the 3 products provided. So let's go ahead and get started. The first of the 3 products in this challenge is the Holiday Banners die set. This die set is perfect for layering the sentiments and creating dimension. Next, we have the Christmas Animals rub-on set. I love this rub-on set. It is filled with the most gorgeous critters, sentiments, and little fun accents that you can add to your projects. These rub-ons are so detailed and easy to apply, and I can't wait to show you how I use them on my project. And finally, the nested stocking die, which will be the star of today's project. To get started, I brought in the Scrapbook.com mixed media paper pad along with my distress re-inker Candied Apple. I added a drop of ink to my work surface, then I spritzed it with water and then smushed my cardstock into that beautiful inky mix. I love Candied Apple. It's one of my favorite colors in the Distress line collection. It's so vibrant and rich, and I love adding it to my card projects. And just look how rich and vibrant this color is. It is so gorgeous. Once I got my first layer down, I used my heat tool to dry it, then repeated the process for a second layer to deepen the color. You do have the option to allow your cardstock to air dry. For this project, you can also use Distress Oxides, or if you would like to use another brand of ink, you can feel free to use that as well. This is one of my favorite techniques because it allows me the freedom of creating my very own unique backgrounds. I'm done applying the ink layers to this panel. Now, I could stop right here once it dries, but I decided to take it up a notch. And that is to add a little shimmer to my project by using Distress Spritz Lumberjack Plaid. First, I'll apply just a light amount of spritz to the background, and then I'll bring in Fossilized Amber, one of my favorite Distress Spritz colors because it adds a touch of gold to my project. I love the combination of the red and gold tones because it adds such a beautiful holiday glow. Once I'm done applying the spritz, I'll bring back in my heat tool, apply some heat to speed up the drying process, and ta-da! Take a look at this panel. Look at that shimmer and shine. It just gives holiday vibes, and I love it. Next, I'll bring in the stocking die from the Nested Stockings die set, and I positioned it on the panel. Once I'm happy with the placement, I'll then create my sandwich and run it through my die cutting machine. For the top cuff, I used the die to die cut Spellbinder's glitter foam and adhere the die cut to the stocking with liquid adhesive. The sparkle really does make this stocking stand out. Now let's create the greenery for this project. I die cut 2 wreaths from Scrapbook.com's cozy wreath die set, one from Spellbinder's fern cardstock and the other from rainforest cardstock. Then I placed the wreath that I die cut from the rainforest cardstock on my Scrapbook.com grip mat and used my blending brush to apply Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide. This adds a bit of depth and realism to those leaves. Once both layers are ready, I adhered them together, slightly offset to give that full layered look. Here's a fun tip I'd love to share with you. Feel free to add an extra layer in between the layers of greenery with either a vellum die cut or a metallic gold. That will add an extra fun look to your wreath. Here's a final look at our wreath. Now it's time for the next step. For my background, I selected a beautiful sheet of pattern paper from Scrapbook.com's Yuletide paper pad. I love this pattern paper. It has so many festive patterns that are perfect to create your holiday projects. Next, I cut out a few snowflake rub-ons from the Christmas Animals rub-on set and position them on my pattern paper. Using the popsicle stick included, I gently rubbed each design until it transferred. To add a bit of age to this pattern paper, I used my blending brush to apply Vintage Photo Distress Oxide around the edges. Then I lightly spritzed water to create those soft, oxidized droplets. I lifted the excess water with a paper towel, and once it was dry, my background had that perfect rustic charm. Now it's time to put it all together. First, I position the stocking on my panel. Then I cut my wreath in half and tucked each piece behind the stocking to create a lush, full arrangement. Next, I worked on my sentiments using the holiday banners die. I die cut the background from alabaster cardstock from Spellbinders and the sentiment letters from gold mirrored cardstock, also from Spellbinders. I then adhered the letters to the banner and then I placed them to the side to allow them to dry. Now it's time for me to adhere the elements to the panel. I first applied liquid adhesive to the back of the wreaths and then adhered them to the panel. For the stocking, to create dimension, I applied foam adhesive to the back. Then I removed the release paper and then adhered the stocking to the panel. You also have the option to create a pocket behind the stocking, creating a money gift card holder. Next, I trimmed off the banner ends of the Merry sentiment to give it a cleaner look. At first, I was going to use Merry Christmas, but then I had a change of heart. For my sub-sentiment, I rubbed on the Season's Greetings design from the rub-on set, then added a little Vintage Photo Distress Oxide to the edges for that cozy distressed feel. Once both sentiments are ready, I used liquid adhesive to adhere them to the front of the stocking. The card front is now complete, so I adhered it to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding card base. And just like that, this card project is complete. I love how this project turned out. The shimmer, the texture, and that mix of bold and rustic tones makes this card feel so festive. I had so much fun being a part of this craft remix challenge with Scrapbook.com, and I can't wait to see what the other amazing makers create using the same products. I hope this project inspires you to remix your supplies and create something uniquely yours. Thanks so much for tuning in today, friends. I'm sending you love and hugs. Until next time, please take care.
Hey there, this is Jess Francisco from LoveJess or LoveJessCo on social media, and I am super excited to be with you today for another episode of Scrapbook.com's Craft Remix. The three main products we're going to be using today are shown right here at the beginning of my video. The first one is the Christmas Animals rub-on transfers. They're 6x8 and you get 2 sheets of different animals. There are so many cute options in there. It was honestly hard to choose for the project, but I hope you love how it turned out. Then we're also going to be using the Nested Stockings die set, and then another die set that is the shape dies that are Noel and Merry Christmas. If you're wondering how I'm going to tie all of these things together, even though they seem a little bit different, let's jump right in and I'll show you what I did. If you follow my channel or social media, you will know that I am an ink blending fanatic. So of course, that is where I started for this card. I did a little bit of ink blending with my Distress Oxide inks. The first color I used was Antique Linen, and then I went in with the tea dye next. So I'm going for sort of a gradient or ombre sort of effect where the color is lighter towards the center and then darker as it gets up into that upper left-hand corner. The third color I used was Gathered Twigs. And then after I did the initial ink blending, I went back through kind of in reverse order and evened out the blending just a little bit so it looked a little smooth, a little bit less of the obvious lines in between, and it just made the colors look really nice together. I love a little splatter on my cards, so I'm using this acrylic gloss spray, and I really don't spray it very often. I usually just take the lid off just like this and tap it over top of my project. Those splatters fall off perfectly and create such a nice look. I set that aside to dry, but once it was dry, I decided to go ahead and cut out some of these small stockings from the Nested Stocking set to do sort of like an eclipse technique here. You'll see as I run it back through repeatedly, I'm cutting out a bunch of the ink blended area and then sort of just arranging it so it's kind of like, I don't know, falling stockings in the upper left-hand corner. And then I'm attaching this ink blended panel to a piece of white cardstock that's the same size so that it sort of acts as a backer or mat for me to be able to attach those stockings to. This gives a lifted effect to the stockings once I put the foam circles in there, and it just kind of helps them pop off the card and give it a little more dimension and excitement rather than having it be flat or kind of more one-dimensional. So these little circles are so great from Scrapbook.com, and they work perfectly for adding that little touch of dimension. The thing I love most about all of the foam products from Scrapbook.com is how easy that release paper comes off the back. If you have ever fought with the backer strips from your foam tape, you will understand the Scrapbook.com ones are magic. I'm going ahead and pairing up the stockings back where they were. So basically creating a little puzzle and then putting the puzzle back together with just that little bit of lifted dimension behind them. So you can see they pop right up off the page. I think it turns out really cute. I was a little worried that I wasn't going to be able to figure out which stockings went where, but I think I got them all in the right places. You guys tell me if you think I messed any of them up. I know I was a little stressed when I was putting them back together. All right, so for the next part, we're getting into those rub-on transfers. I have not used rub-on transfers that often, and so I was really excited to get to use these. I cut out around this cute little mouse couple. I left that star up in the upper corner, but I am going to use that later, but I knew I wanted to kind of separate it and just take these little cuties for now. So all you have to do is peel off that little backer strip and then use the included, basically basically popsicle stick to rub that directly on. You want to make sure you rub all of the areas, or you can get only partial transfers. And I'll show you how to make that work to your advantage in a little bit when I do part of the sentiment. So once you've rubbed that all the way on, all we have to do is peel off that clear sheet, and you've got this adorable pre-colored image that's all ready to go. This is so great if you are not a big marker fan, if you don't want to spend the time coloring. This is the way to get those adorable images without all that extra work. All right, so I picked out a couple colors from this Christmas paper pad, and I chose this tan and sort of red burgundy sort of color. I cut it out both ways with the Noel and Merry Christmas dies. I wasn't sure if I liked the tan with the red letters or the red with the tan letters, so I cut them both just so I could see what it would look like on the card. And then I ended up going with the red and then the tan letters. I thought that looked the best, but I don't know, you could do either way. I went ahead and used my precision glue press again to get into those tiny little areas. This thing is a lifesaver for those little itty bitty dots of glue. And then I was able to put those directly on as well. Once I knew where I wanted it, then I added a little more glue onto the back, but I kind of played around with it a little bit to get that position kind of just how I wanted. Once I added the glue there, I did need to cut off the excess a bit. I didn't bother putting anything behind the little banner part, or like the string sort of that the word is kind of hanging from. I felt like it was pretty well supported on its own, and I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. But just snip those little extra bits off and call it a day. All right, so now we are moving into the other part of our sentiment. So I chose this little Merry Christmas text block here. And since I already had this paper cut out, I decided to use that top corner. I think it's really cool that you can use the rub-ons on colored paper too. You don't have to just use them on white. And you can get some different effects that way. So I removed the backer, went ahead and put it directly onto the piece of paper, and then I didn't do all of the rubbing on super well. So I'm getting a distressed edge in the corner up in the top left side. I did do a little too good of a job on the bottom right side. I kind of wanted to do sort of a more rustic look because everything was looking a little bit too perfect and crisp for me. And so I wanted to add a little spontaneous kind of nature to it. So I went ahead and just scratched part of it off. You can totally do this. If you don't want those perfect edges, you just scratch at it just a little bit. Just be careful because it can come off, in a bigger chunk than maybe you would want if you're not careful. But I just took a little bit off of that lower right-hand corner so that it kind of matched that upper left corner a bit better. And then I was ready to go ahead and apply that to my card. So back at it with the glue, and I did add a little bit of a foam dot there on the right-hand side, just so that it would be supported, since part of it was on the stocking and part of it was on the regular backer or card panel. And once I got that in place, I pushed it right down, and I'm super excited about that. I think it looks adorable. I didn't think the card was quite done, because what is a card without a little bit of sparkle and shimmer? So I went ahead and added in some of those rub-on transfers that were just sort of like gold foil looking stars and accents. If I had this to do over again, I would recommend doing this part before the foam tape was applied. It did make it a little tricky to get the rub-on transfer rubbed on well, because the foam tape is squishy, and it kind of was just not as like flat and well supported as if I had done it beforehand. So if you're going to do this, I might recommend adding those little accents before you attach the stockings with the foam tape. So I just added a few. I didn't go crazy. I didn't go overboard, and I mostly kept it in the ink blended section rather than on the white part, because I really wanted that little focus or spotlight on the mice. And I think they look so cute. All right, so we're in the home stretch here. I am attaching the card panel to a mat. So again, I'm using that same craft kind of colored or tan colored cardstock from the paper pack from Scrapbook.com. And I just cut it to maybe 1/8 of an inch bigger than my card panel. That way I had a little bit of a border and a little something to kind of act as a barrier against my white card base. So it helps it pop a little bit more. I like it. If you don't like it, you can always skip that step. No worries. So applying glue to the back of this one as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and attach that to my A2 size card base. So that's 4¼ by 5½ inches. And I choose the top folding ones, but you could also do side folding as well, whatever you prefer. And just like that, our card is done. I am so excited to have been creating with you all today. I cannot wait to see what the other crafters do for their craft remix challenge. And I hope you'll leave us some comments down below and let us know what you think.
Hey, it's Rick Atkins from Rick Atkins Designs. I'm super excited to be taking part in this episode of the Craft Remix, and I'm super excited to play with this episode's bundle. Here we have the Happy Banners shape dies, the nested stocking dies, and the Christmas Animals 1 rub-on. I also threw in some of the Holiday Express pattern paper, as well as the bow topper die set for my card today. So we're going to go ahead and cut down our pattern paper that we're going to use on our background. And I've cut 3 pieces of that. One is cut at A2 size, one is 2¼ by 4, and then the other one is 2¼ by 4¼ this one right here. So I'm going to take my stocking. This is the 3rd largest one of the nested stocking dies, and I'm going to cut that down. I'm going to take a piece of the mixed media white paper pad, and I'm going to cut a little piece of that, and I'm going to run all of these through my die cutting machine with my magic mat. And I did flip that over because I use one side for die cutting and I will use the other side as a smooth surface to do my rub-ons with. So I'm going to go ahead and tape this in place with a little mint tape and make sure that's straight. And we will run this through our die cutting machine here. And I'm just going to run that through. I've got both my pieces of my stockings. And I'm going to go ahead and do my banner for my die for sentiment as well. I'm using that Holiday Banners 1 die set. I'm using that outline die of the Noel. I'm going to also take the smallest bow from the bow toppers and cut that out. I'm cutting that out actually twice for my card today. And I'm okay with everything sticking in because the mixed media paper is a little thicker. That's great. No problem. I can poke it out with my Craft Pro Pick tool. So I'll go ahead and run that last bow through that we're going to need. So I'm going to go ahead and take all those off, put them in my little stack and sort tray, if I could talk today, y'all. Now we're going to do our letters for our Noel sentiment, and I just cut that out of another piece of the Holiday Express pattern paper. I've put everything in my stack and sort tray over here, and I'll go ahead and pop those letters into that as well so I don't lose them, because if you follow me, you know I'm going to lose something. All right, I have flipped my Magic Mac over to the other side, and I've taken my stocking. I'm going to add that on, and I'm going to pick out the rub-on I want to use from these fabulous Christmas Animals rub-ons that I absolutely adore. And I'm going to take and put that onto my rub-on. I removed that wax backing, but I'm going to put it back on top of my rub-on to protect it from my plate because I haven't bought new plates. So there's that. And I'm going to run this through a couple times really slow, so that I get a nice good adhesion. There's several different ways you can do this. Later on in the video, I'll show you just using the my bone folder. So we're going to go ahead and I'll remove that wax backing and remove the transfer sheet, I guess is what it is. I really don't know. So I've got my rub-on nice and adhere. I'm going to add some Vintage Photo Distress ink around the edge of all my die cuts, except the sentiment is too small. So we're going to do the same thing for our stocking top. We're going to add that sentiment, that ink blending around that, as well as our pattern paper. And why I didn't think of this, I pulled in my silicone craft mat that I've cut down, and I'm going to ink blend around all those edges to give it a more of a vintagey feel, because to me, these animals rub-ons look very vintage. So I'm going to go ahead and ink blend all those little papers that we're going to use on our card today. And I did make 2 additional cards off camera using the same products. I'll show you those pictures at the end. So we'll go ahead and add range set up all of our little pieces. I'm going to spray my silicone craft mat with some water because Lord knows we ain't going to let that ink go to waste. So I'm going to flick on ink all over, our distress ink all over our background panels to give a little bit more texture on all those. I'm just going to pick it up with the brush and flick it on off my finger. Just tapping that brush to my finger, and we will just take and add little dots of that beautiful distress ink, and I'm not going to let that go to waste because I'm a cheap chicken. So we will go ahead and flick on that a little bit more, and we are almost done with the flicking. So I got a little carried away maybe with the flicking. So I've got all those done. I'm going to dry it with my heat tool and get that ink nice and dry on all of our parts and pieces. And it did not affect my rub-on, so there's no worry there. Now we're going to build up our card base. I've got an A2 top folding card base cut from Nina ultra thick cardstock. I have RTS glue in my glue press. I love adding the RTS glue into my little glue press. I got the extra bottle, added that in, and I always have it on hand. So I'm going to go ahead and attach my plaid pattern right in the center of our card front. And then we will take our other little pattern here and we're going to flip it up on its side so that we have some visual interest on our cards. We're going to lay a small bead of glue down onto the top of our stocking to attach our little stocking top. And then I'm going to go ahead and kind of place this where I kind of want it to be. I'm going to take my Craft Pro Pick tool and poke out all those little extra pieces from the die cut banner. And then I'm going to I've pulled it back in my silicone craft mat. And I'm going to attach my letters using my RTS glue in my precision glue press. I'm picking those letters up with my Scrapbook.com reverse tweezers that I absolutely adore. And I'm going to just add little dabs of glue behind each letter, attaching them onto each of the banner areas, shadow layers where they're supposed to go. And we would just add those. We've got our little E right here. We're going to add that. And we got our L, which is our last letter. And we were going to add that. I decided that I do have one that says Merry Christmas, but I decided that it fit better than no L on the stocking from what I had planned. So I'm going to take and add glue behind that. I'm going to attach that right to the top of my stocking. And then I'm going to take my titanium scissors that I absolutely adore because glue does not stick to them. And I'm going to trim those edges off. There is that all done. So I'm just going to pull in my little bows and I'm going to add those on either side of my stocking banners, the sentiment banner at the top of my stocking. I'm going to add just a little dab of glue right behind the little center. Got those in. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to pull in some of my other rub-ons. I'm using the same rub-ons from the set, our Christmas Animal Set 1. I've decided I wanted to use those poinsettias, so I've cut that big one out right there. And I'm just going to take my bone folder with that protective sheet in place and rub it on. You could use the popsicle stick that's in the rub-ons. I just had that bone folder handy, so I just went ahead and did that. I'm going to add some more of those little poinsettias. And also, I threw in some of the gold foiled elements as well. I went ahead and cut all those out. I'm going to put my stocking back in place so I know where I want to put these elements. So I'm going to go ahead and rub one onto the stocking. I'm going to rub the other one onto our little card on that bottom right-hand side. I'm going to make sure that it's stuck. If not, just rub it a little bit more and you get it all nice and stuck. Once you get it down, and it's easy to kind of push back in place if you get it not lined up. Now I'm going to add my metallic ones. I have one of the little stars already on the stocking because I was too lazy to cut it out. So I'm going to add some more on there for our little embellishments. We've got this little candy cane that's nice and gold metallic. We're going to add that up there at the top of our little stocking. And then I've got one of the little snowflakes we're going to add right here next to our little fox riding his little horsey. And then I'm going to get everything out of the way. I'm going to flip my stocking over and I'm going to take some 1mm, 1-inch thick foam tape from Scrapbook.com. I'm going to cut off a couple pieces using my titanium scissors. And I'm going to cut a little piece off right there. And the rest of that I'm going to cut in half and stick on the other side of that stocking and add a couple little small pieces down at the bottom so that everything's nice and in here. I stuck the extra back onto the roll on the protective sheeting. I'm going to peel these off And then I will add some Artis glue on top of my foam tape so that it gives me a little bit of wiggle room to get my stocking in position that I want it. So I'm going to line it up on my card front, and I've got it on there. And I'm going to add one little touch. I took some very thin glue, and I'm going to add some rock candy glitter to the top of my stocking to give it a little bit of a sparkle. The, I can't think of what they're called. The little glitter that Scrapbook.com had would be perfect for this. All right, here is a look at the card we just made together. Here's a closer look at our card. And here are some pictures of the other cards that I made using these same products. I look so forward to seeing what the other two designers came up with. I'll see you in their videos. Bye, guys. Stay crafty. Love you.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Craft Remix by Scrapbook.com. You can get the bundle today's crafters used. If you create with this kit, upload photos of your projects to the gallery and tag the bundle so that we can see your take on these projects. Remember, the best place to watch videos from Scrapbook.com is at Scrapbook.com/livestream. Thank you to today's instructors, and we will see you in the next episode.